So hey everybody, welcome to ARE Live. I'm Marc, the founder of Black Spectacles, and today I'm with Charlie Klecha, the president of AIAS, Mr. President. And for those of you who don't know, Charlie is probably one of the craziest young architects that I know, because maybe in 3 weeks, Charlie's going to take all 7 of the ARE exams consecutively in 7 days. So he's calling it his 7 and 7 effort, his program, whatever you want to call it. And so he's in the middle of doing a lot of studying right now. So we're going to talk about that. He's also recently announced and launched the PASS scholarship program. So we'll talk about that. But first, the AIA Convention is coming up. If I'm not mistaken, you're teaching a course, right?
Yeah, I'm leading a session. I think it was denied for educational value, but
really?
Leading a session called View from the Backseat, Student Perspectives on Contemporary Issues. So we're going to take on some of the more controversial and divisive issues being debated among the profession.
Really?
Should be interesting.
What's where'd you guys come up with that?
It actually kind of came out, the AIS is typically sort of granted a token session at convention. This year we're actually doing multiple. We applied to get more. So actually our Vice President, Obi, is leading an educational session, a certified educational session called Kanye Architecture Just West of Insanity on Saturday morning. But this came out of last year's session, which was a little bit tame. It was sort of generic updates from some of our alums. And at the end we actually had a professional stand up and ask us directly to be more challenging, to say something controversial, say something that would challenge the profession. So this year is intended to answer that call maybe a little more emphatically than than they meant when they said that, but it should get some healthy debate going.
So what are the controversial topics that you're going to cover?
We'll talk about, they'll kind of be drawn at random. We have, I think, 7 topics, including things like as broad as the value of licensure in general. Intern titling has been a big one that's going around. Use of the word intern. The education and practice gap that's been observed, not only in the U.S., but internationally. Things along those lines. I don't want to give too much away, but it will be some healthy discussion.
Okay. Good deal. So for those folks who maybe don't know actually what the AIAS is, can you tell me, can you describe it?
Yeah. So the AIAS is the American Institute of Architecture Students. We were founded in 1956 as a member group within the AIA. Some years later, in the early 80s, we actually broke off and became an independent, student-governed 501c3 organization. So we have our own board of directors, our own staff here in DC. The president and vice president, while we are elected officers, we are full-time employees of the organization. So it's a unique setup in that way. But we serve as the voice of students of architecture and design across the U.S. and with a growing international presence, including advocacy efforts, member support, educational resources. Our members come from not only NAB accredited degree programs, but pre-arch programs, community college programs, and even a handful of high school chapters.
Okay, and so you're the president of AIS. Can you tell me? And of course, we know each other, from being here in Chicago and the School of the Art Institute of Chicago. So I know this, but tell me your story about how you came to be the AIS president.
Yeah, so I did a 3-year master's in Chicago at the School of the Art Institute of Chicago. When I started there, initially actually had no interest in becoming a licensed architect. I came from a theater background before that degree, so I was interested in architectural lighting design. But got sort of, as is kind of commonly the case, got sort of dragged into the AIAS by upperclassmen who wanted me to get involved. Sort of reluctantly did so. And it was actually halfway through that 3 years that I attended my first national convention with the AIAS. It was my first real exposure to the organization outside of my own chapter. And that was kind of the flip of a switch for me. That was an awakening moment. Realized the impact and the power and the enthusiasm of the organization at the national level. So even though that was my very first convention, I decided right then and there that at the next convention I would run for national office. Typically, there's sort of a progression to regional director and then up into the officer positions. But my next convention or my next conference was going to be my last, so I decided to just jump in feet first and run for president. AIAS runs its elections entirely at that conference, so over the course of those 4 days, that's all the campaigning you do. So you get an opening speech, a closing speech, a series of Q&As, and then, of course, the sort of informal interactions with the membership and the delegates. And that was I was actually in Chicago, and it was an insane weekend. And it worked. The membership elected me to office. So 6 months later, I picked up and moved to D.C., and here I am.
Awesome.
It has been an interesting journey. Over the course of that time, I was not only transitioning into this office, but also on the search committee to hire a new executive director, and also finishing grad school. So it was an intense semester followed by a continually intense term. But it's been pretty incredible.
Awesome. And so it's a 1-year term, if I understand it right, coming to a close here in the next month and a half or so. And so you're looking forward. You're getting ready to go out in the profession, practice this architecture stuff. You want to get licensed, and somehow you decided that, hey, why don't I just take all 7 exams in a week?
Yeah. It's
so what? Tell me that story. How did that come about? Why are you doing this?
It kind of started as a joke, actually. It was so our new executive director, Nick Surface, was formerly at NCARB. So we were having a conversation about the kind of joint AIA NCARB, the IDP Firm Award, an IDP Outstanding Firm Award, which is a program he used to be involved with when he was there. And one of the criteria for that award is the firm giving support to those on the path to licensure, including paying for the exams. So I made a crack that if we were advocating for that position, that we need to put our money where our mouth is. And since I'm a full-time employee of the organization should pay for me to take the exams. To which I think he came back mostly jokingly and said, well, if you take them all in a week, I'll pay for them. And so that kind of started the conversation. Ultimately the funding was not really the premise of it, but it started this idea of supporting the path to licensure. That's been my goal for my year all along, has been bringing us sort of back into touch with the value of the AIAS as a leadership development and professional development tool. We're sometimes pigeonholed a little bit as sort of a social organization, but very often organically it tends to be a place where students really become emboldened with a passion for leadership and a passion for advancement. And so it was really just finding a way to get in touch with that and really own it, tell that story well. Like I said, it had been happening organically for as long as we've existed, but it's just not the story we tell some of the time. So this campaign is ultimately in support of the scholarship fund. So this little stunt of mine is really intended to draw attention to that scholarship and raise support for that. I'm often reminded by elder mentors of mine that back in their day they did it in 4 days. So what I'm doing is not really that impressive. Right.
That's awesome.
Which is always just a thrill to hear.
Yeah.
But it's true that that's not something that many students are aware of. It's not as insane as it sounds.
Yeah.
And in fact, there's a lot of overlap in the exams. So it's, in some ways, if you can make it feasible in terms of the time and resources necessary to devote to it, it can be a good way to knock a big chunk of it out at once and start moving on. The kind of irony is that even if I pass all 7 of these on the first go, I will still not be licensed because I have 2 years left to get my IDP finished.
Yeah.
So that'll be a fun little waiting game.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think we all know that the most daunting part isn't the 3 years of experience, it's the exams. And so, I mean, I love that you're doing it because, number one, Mike Newman, who does our ARE prep stuff, he always says in front of his workshops, if all of you guys were MBA students, half of you would just show up and take all the exams without even studying, knowing that, you know, just based on probability, you would probably pass some of them. And so you wouldn't have to study for those. And then you could just, you know, move forward and worry about the other ones. And then, you know, I ran into, when I was taking the exam, I ran into some folks who, it was right after the 3-year period was up. And this was back in the day when you had to wait 3 years, which you don't anymore. But it was right after that 3-year period, and I ran into them, and they were like licensed right after that period. I was like, how did you guys get licensed so fast? And they're like, oh, we signed up ahead of time for all 7 of the exams, and we placed them 2 weeks apart from each other. And I'm like, you guys are crazy. And they're like, no, we're not. Like, if you give yourselves 4 weeks or 6 weeks or 8 weeks to study for the exams, how long are you really going to study? You're going to study for 2 weeks. And I took their advice, and, you know, I failed one of the exams, but I passed the other ones, and, you know, I waited my 6 months and then, you know, took it again. So I think it's a good approach. It helps you stay focused, and it's awesome what you're doing.
Well, and that's, I think, a fantastic piece of advice, and wasn't an angle I had heard until I actually saw one of the pieces on YouTube that you and Mike did.
Yeah.
And when I heard that, it was just a week or two ago. I heard that and thought, oh man, why didn't I just schedule one up front ahead of the rest of these, so I could just take it and expect to fail just to get used to the process. And maybe I knock it out and maybe I don't.
Right.
But I think that's a fantastic piece of advice, to just suck up the 210 and expect that it's going to be a loss. The worst case is you know what to expect going in the next time. And the best case is you pass one without studying. Like, pick the one that you think you're the best at, and just give it a shot. Why not?
Yeah.
But yeah, I think ultimately the message is just to get started. It's so hard sometimes to get past that sort of zero barrier. The you know, even when I was started logging IDP, even after I had opened an NCARB record, getting those first few hours logged, just because I wasn't familiar with the process, like, it's so easy to keep pushing it off. And that's ultimately the message, is even if you just take one, just get started, so it's not this big looming thing on the horizon.
Yeah. You know, so it's interesting. I was listening to the video that you have on Indiegogo for the PASS scholarship, which stands for Professional Advancement Support Scholarship. And
very clever acronym.
Yeah, but it was interesting. You said something in there. You had mentioned, so NCARB, you know, I don't know, maybe how long it's been, a year or 2 years ago, they changed the rules so that you could take the exam immediately upon graduating, whereas, of course, in the past you had to wait for those full 3 years and then take it. And what you said in that video, I think, was that that hasn't really kind of sparked a big revolution in people taking the exam right away. Can you talk more about that?
Yeah, I mean, it really, I think, goes back to the initial shift away from the once or twice a year model, and however well-intentioned it was to make it more flexible to take the exam. Like I said, it's so much easier, especially as an entry-level you know, professional, when money is tight, maybe your loans are starting to come due, you're making entry-level salary. It's so easy to say, I've got this deadline, I'm going to push it back, or I'm going to reschedule it for a little later, or I'll take it next year when I've got a little more experience under my belt. And that's been the case. We've seen from the time that they shifted away from the once-a-year model to now, the average time to licensure has just skyrocketed. And I have to assume it's...
Hold on, it's skyrocketed, you said?
Yeah, the average time is, I want to say it's from the beginning of school. The average time from the beginning of school to receiving a license is 15 years. And that's an average. That's crazy to me, to think that there are enough people that go over that to bring the average down.
Yeah.
But
yeah, seriously.
It seems to me, I don't know that I'll necessarily spend my entire career in traditional practice. I still have a lot of interests that are kind of outside of that sphere. But the thing that ultimately swayed me was the idea that, you know, I spent 3 years of hell getting through grad school and doing the all-nighter thing. And, you know, why would I stop halfway through the process when it's never going to be easier than right now to finish those exams? You know, especially things like structures, it's just going to get harder the longer I wait. So why wouldn't I just kind of keep that momentum going? I'm still in the sort of grad school, intense teeth grit mindset. Why wouldn't I just finish it? And then I have it and it's done, and if I practice, great. If not, I still got it. It's still a credential. It's only ever going to help to have that. It's never going to be a hindrance for me to have a license.
And it's almost the opposite, you know, like if, God, if you wait for a long, long time, I mean, you know, I have some, you know, some friends who they're you know, they've been out of school for 15 years and they're still talking about it as something they might do, and their lives are more complicated. They have less time. It's so much easier, as you say, to take it right out of school. And then I'm curious if you found this. I know that when I was studying, and I spaced my exams 2 weeks apart, I found that studying for one and then taking it, the two things happened. One, that the knowledge that I was kind of sopping up from that studying session kind of rolled over into the next session. And so, like, you know, I was in a way studying for all of the exams by studying for one, because, you know, there's just little bits that kind of roll from one exam to the next. But then also, like, once you kind of, and I mean, you're like the perfect guy to ask right now because you're doing this. Once you kind of get in the studying groove, you know, or like, this is what I do after work, this is what I do on my lunch hour, this is what I do on Saturday morning, that it just becomes part of your schedule. Everyone kind of knows that's what's going on. People that you work with, they know, oh yeah, we're not going to go have lunch, you know, because, you know, he's studying for the exam. Have you found those two things to be true, or no, or different?
Yeah, I mean, it's ultimately, you got to want it. I mean, you got to be willing to sacrifice some social life. I have the luxury of, I guess it's a luxury in this case, that my wife is, you know, 1,000 miles away. So
oh, you're a dead man for saying that.
It's a luxury in the sense that I don't have other distractions. I don't, you know, but it's true. I don't get to do things like go to professional sports events like Cubs games or Blackhawks games. I know that this is something I want to do, and as much as it sucks to say, hey, guy, I can't go out to the happy hour tonight, I got to study. Or, you know, I like to drive into work and blast music to wake myself up, but I started taking the bus so that I can sit there and get an hour and a half each way studying for the exams and, you know, drilling those practice exams and things. It's worth however much you decide it is. So if it's worth more than that night out at the bar for you to be ready for the exams, then it'll pay off. If not, you might not want it.
Plus, the faster you take them, the faster you can get back to those
exactly.
sporting events and that beautiful wife of yours. So okay, so the PASS. Let's talk a little bit about the PASS scholarship. Tell me what it is.
So it's, as you mentioned, it's the Professional Advancement Support Scholarship. I thought very long and hard about that acronym and felt very proud of myself for coming up with it. It is basically intended to encourage students to not necessarily do exactly what I'm doing in the whole stacking them within a week, but encouraging students to make a plan to keep moving toward licensure if that's their goal. We've seen historically over, not just recently, but the last several decades, that only about half of those who go to architecture school go on to be licensed, and that's fine. And we as an organization support any track. But for those that know that that's what they want, make a plan and get started. Like I was saying before, it's so easy to kind of put that off. But if you're willing to commit to just getting started, to taking that first step, getting familiar with what it's like to go into a Prometric test center and get your fingerprints scanned, then it's less daunting to keep moving in that direction. And it's good for your career. It's good for your personal development. It's really about taking those first steps. So the scholarship fund is currently in the fundraising phase. So we have the campaign on Indiegogo, AIAS.org/pass. Redirects to that campaign.
Yeah, we'll put a link to that in the show notes.
Up here or something. Nice. So it's we're raising money now. The hope is primarily to get some big support, the big bulk of the support from groups like AIA components, firms, other organizations and things. But on the individual level, the best case scenario is asking for the donation of $210 at the cost of one exam. And what the scholarship is in its distribution is if an alumnus of the AIAS sits for and passes a division of the AIA within 1 year of graduating, they get their money back. They can apply. There may be a small written portion of it just to give us kind of an evaluation criteria, but they would get their $210 back. So between the PASS and the 7 and 7 campaign are complementary in that it's the two big things that I think recent graduates can use as an excuse to not get started, whether or not they really believe them, is the financial burden and the access to or knowledge of the information and resources that are out there. So the 7 and 7 campaign, these weekly videos that I'm doing are demonstrating what's out there and how I've been going through the process, literally starting from scratch. And then this scholarship is intended to offset that financial burden by allowing you to get your money back for the exam.
Okay.
So donors to the scholarship fund will get paired directly with the recipient of their scholarship. So the hope is that this can also help generate some sort of informal, organic mentorship relationships, and hopefully geographically matched where possible, so that it can become this sort of ongoing thing.
So let me say this back to you. So right now, today, you guys are in the fundraising phase of this scholarship. So you're trying to raise money so that you can fund all these scholarships, and that goes for till the end or to the middle of June, if I'm understanding right.
It's actually about 2 days after I finish the exam, so it's first week of June.
Okay, so first week of June, and then if I was an AIAS member and I was graduating this May, let's say, how's it intended to work? Is it that I need to just go take the exam, and then I will, once I pass it, then I'll basically sort of submit to be reimbursed by the AIS and maybe fill out a scholarship form, write a couple of paragraph essay, and then maybe you guys will pick me to be one of the people to have to have my exam reimbursed. Is that basically the idea?
Yep, that's essentially how it works. Obviously, it's a brand new program, so there's a lot of question marks. It's kind of an experiment based both on how much money we're able to raise and how many people apply for it. We graduate about 1,000 students a year from our membership, and how many of those are going to be willing to kind of step up and take on that challenge is certainly a question. But yeah, that's the hope, is that this fall we'll start receiving applications for the scholarship. And beginning with those graduating this spring, that we'll start to be able to pay it back. And it's really more about, it's kind of similar to a scholarship the AIA runs called the Pettigrew Scholarship, except that is pays for all 7 exams and a suite of study materials, where we're really going more for quantity. We want more people to get started. So we don't want it to be a long shot at one really big prize. We want one exam to get paid back for a lot of people. So that's the hope in raising funds, is that we create a fund that is able to be self-sustaining, that we can keep going year after year and distribute these scholarships as widely as possible. Yeah,
that's awesome. Okay, and so I've just shared my screen with you. Now I'm on the Indiegogo page where you can go to contribute. So if you're someone who wants to help fund this, it's $210 to take one section of one exam. So maybe you could be a division donor, or you could be a larger donor, and then you can. Charlie has a good video here about the whole program. So definitely go to what's your URL? It's
AIS.org/pass goes to this page.
Got it.
Okay. Page.
I just Googled Indiegogo AIS Pass, and this was the first thing that came up. So as I said, we'll put the links in the show notes as well. And so let me grab this last note here. When do you anticipate? So I know that you guys are in the fundraising process right now. When are you in? Actually, let me switch over here. Sorry. I should get my face again. It's my face again. Hi. So I know you're in the fundraising stage right now. But pretty soon you're going to be accepting applications from students to actually get reimbursed. So what's sort of the time frame for that?
So we have our summer conference at the end of July. So we'll probably make a big announcement there with an official start date. It may be relatively shortly after that, but the intention is to align roughly with the beginning of the fall semester. So we have a new membership crop that will be kind of aware of this program throughout. It can be used to a certain extent as a recruiting tool for our chapters that are trying to talk about the benefits of membership, and this can become a very tangible thing if they know that they're on the path to licensure. So yeah, it's late summer, early fall should be the first crop of applications, and we'll probably announce those recipients in a formal way at our annual conference in December.
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you, Charlie, for taking some time to chat with us. Good luck preparing for the exam. I can't wait to find out how you do. Of course, I mean, that's an amazing amount of publicity and pressure around, I mean, taking all 7 sections, and then everyone's going to find out how you did. So best of luck.
Thankfully, I have great resources because I watch Black Spectacles ARE prep videos.
Yeah, very good. Good. I hope those are working out for you.
Yeah, they're working out real well.
Very good.
Mike Newman's a great guy.
Awesome. So thank you, Charlie. Thank you for everyone who's tuned in. Please do us a favor and hop over to iTunes and rate our podcast. Let us know what you think. We'll read every single word that you write and use that to, tune up our next episode. So thank you so much, and thanks for tuning in.
Thanks.